Think about this. Right when they were getting the warnings that myocarditis and pericarditis were real and serious side effects to the vaccine, and they had already agreed, the top scientists at FDA had already agreed to compress the schedule as much as possible. Right when they got the message that there were serious side effects, and Peter Marks, instead of telling them, we're going to give you more time to study this, he told them to compress the schedule even more. And when they said that compressing the schedule was not possible, he fired them. He took them off the job, assigned them to other duties. The top vaccine officials who've been there for 30 years, taken off the job because they wanted more time to study the effects of the vaccines, and they were told that they needed to do this quickly because they needed to be mandated.
Myocarditis occurred most predominantly in the various studies in young men, as you say, age 16 and 17, but there were increased rates higher in men than in women, going up also to much older ages, although not as high as the youngest. So I don't know if it's necessarily a puberty issue because this also affected people as they got older, but that was where we saw it most frequently. And the rates of myocarditis in these young men was quite high. In the early studies, it appeared to be around 1 in 5,000 vaccinees. We still don't understand why that was the case. What we luckily found was that most of these cases were mild, and yet there were some cases that were not mild. And of course, there were also some cases where, many cases where if once diagnosed with myocarditis, of course, that changes a young man's life because he'll probably then avoid being in sports and will still have some continued medical follow-up. So we don't understand it. It's most common after the second dose of vaccine. We found, luckily, that it did not appear to be as frequent as children got younger, and it also did not appear to occur with anywhere near as high a frequency with third and subsequent doses of vaccine.
Mr. Krause, I want to ask, is natural immunity real?
Absolutely.
And is it also, does natural immunity exist if you've been exposed to COVID?
Exposed to but not infected?
Well, infected.
Yes, so people who've been previously infected with COVID or who've previously had the COVID-19 disease were shown in a number of very good studies to have reduced incidence of subsequent COVID. And in fact, the protection of a previous episode of COVID was greater than the protection that was received from 2 doses of vaccine. It turned out that if you had both had COVID and vaccine, then you were protected even a little bit better. But there is no doubt that a previous episode of COVID induces immunity that is protective.
So it's not some conspiracy?
No, it's not a conspiracy.
Dr. Krause, did you take a booster?
I did not.